Good evening, everyone. And welcome to the Voices to Vote speaker series. My name is Heather Reed, and I'll be your MC this evening. I am currently the Community Economic Development Consultant at the Haliburton County Development Corporation. Woohoo! I want to open this evening by respectfully acknowledging that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the William Treaties First Nations, and also within the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin First Nations. The intent and spirit of the treaties that form the legal basis of Canada bind us to share and provide stewardship for the land. And I think I've made this comment before, but we are so connected to our land base here in places like Haliburton and in lots of rural communities. But, you know, our economy is tied to the land, our social interactions, you know, whether we can get there on a January evening, culturally. And I think this evening is one of those times to really reflect that we all have individual ways that we interact with our land and the lakes and the trees and all of the wonderful nature that we get to live in. But we also have opportunities to make decisions about how other people make decisions in the municipal landscape and in government, and how that connection comes at that level as well. So just give that some thought as we're going through this evening. So tonight is the final session of a 4-part series. And this evening's focus is on understanding campaigns, how success happens. This session will outline what a successful campaign looks like as a candidate, a supporter, or a voter. And there are also parallels to be drawn in terms of other types of community campaigns for a more broad application. The series is supported by the Haliburton County Development Corporation, Canoe FM, Haliburton County Community Cooperative, the Telling Our Story speaker series, and Gen Design, who built our fantastic website. I want to give a shout out to Midori and Tammy for the setup and the filming, and also to Eric for doing the sound for us. And in particular, this evening, this room was donated by Algonquin Highlands, and their staff team has been extremely helpful in helping us get set up. So thanks to them as well. The series is a brainchild of the Haliburton Highlands Healthy Democracy Project, which is a project of the co-op as well. The Healthy Democracy Project is a community-led initiative aiming to strengthen civic participation, support local leadership, and support the democracy here in our community. I'd like to introduce the team behind the scenes. These may be some familiar faces to you. Barry Martin, Lauren Hunter, Carol Moffat, Sean Penny Legion, and Jessica Slade. And I can tell you from personal experience, this is a very dedicated group of volunteers who have been working really hard to make these sessions happen. And they have a very strong belief in community connection, accessible information, and the idea that democracy works best when everyone feels invited to be around the table. So thanks to the committee for making tonight possible. Before we dive in, we do have a couple of questions for you. So if you go to the menti.com site on your phone, you won't need to create an account or anything like that. And you just pop in this code, and what will happen is you'll see the first question, and as you start to answer it, we'll see those results live. And then if you want to, you'll also be able to see the presentation slides as we go through the rest. So I'll just give you a minute to bring that up. Are we ready for the first question? Okay. So why the heck are you here? What motivated you to come to the session this evening? And as I said, as you answer, we'll see the live results. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Can you pick more than one? You can choose more than one if you want to. Okay, thank you. That's we've got a lot of curious people in the room. That's great. Gives Lauren an idea of who she's speaking to for the presentation, so thank you for participating in that. Our agenda for this evening is fairly straightforward. I'm going to spend a little time just giving you a recap, a bit of a flavor for the sessions that have happened prior to this one. And then we'll hear a presentation from Lauren. There'll be some time for questions, and then I'll wrap up the evening with a little bit of a taste of what's yet to come for the Healthy Democracies Project. So during the first session, it was a great kickoff for the whole series. More than 90 people were in attendance in Haliburton. Jessica Slade provided an excellent overview of how municipal government works, both in general and specifically here in Haliburton County. This presentation also highlighted the roles that we have as community members to work with municipal councils and make creative projects happen. This evening, that evening, highlighted several community success stories as examples where grassroots efforts combined with municipal council work can make some really cool things happen. The whole presentation and video is on the Healthy Democracies Project website under the resource tab. So if you missed it, you can go there anytime. And so far, interesting, 55 people have gone online and watched that presentation. For the second session, we hosted Barry DeVolin and Miriam Monsef, who spoke about their motivation for running for office, Barry at the federal level and Miriam at the provincial level. And this panel was really to give different perspectives on why people run for council. There were 60 people who came out to Wilberforce, and 50 additional folks have watched that video online as well. So as you can imagine, the bar was pretty high for session 3, held in Minden. And for this one, there was a very dynamic panel discussion focused on giving a behind-the-scenes perspective on municipal leadership. Former local councillors Carol Moffat, Pat Kennedy, and Andrea Roberts were joined by Dane Nielsen, a current councillor from Grey County, and the evening did not disappoint. There were 75 people in attendance, and 77 have watched it online. It was a huge success, and there was a real buzz in the room at the end of the evening. So there are 2 more quick questions before I hand it over to Lauren. This one we've asked at each event, and it gives the committee some interesting information about who's in the room. So I'll just give you a minute to participate in this question as well. Okay, great. That's helpful. It sort of, I think it gives, reinforces that the right people are in the room tonight. So thank you for that. And the last question is another one that we've asked at every session because I think the committee recognizes that there are some barriers to running for council. And one of the things that they're interested in learning about is, are there projects, initiatives, ideas that they can tackle going forward to make being part of local municipal government more accessible? I'm looking at the results and I'm thinking, I think we're training the community in Mentimeter skills as we go. So that's great. Thank you. That's some good information for the committee to reflect on as they think about what's next. Okay, we're going to switch gears to the reason why you all came tonight. Lauren Hunter is our presenter for this evening, and Lauren is a management consultant with a Rising Collective based both in Haliburton and Peterborough. She is a self-defined political nerd, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know Lauren better over the last year, and it's just, it's been really incredible to see the skill set that she brings to everything that she does and the passion that she has brought to this project. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren for tonight's presentation.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for starting this off on a great note, and to my colleagues at the Democracy Project for all of their hard work in setting up this session. So I come to politics in a way that many people do. My family, primarily my mom, always talked politics and current affairs at the dinner table. But I was really bitten by the bug in high school when I opposed a decision made by our local school board. And together with a bunch of other local families, launched a pretty big advocacy campaign to overturn that decision. One that attracted the attention of Canadians from right across the country, including our newly named Governor General Louise Arbour. What do you know? Ultimately, we did win that fight, although it was complicated as we got there. But I really saw what was possible when a group of committed people who felt strongly about an issue got together to work to make change. And since then, once I got started, I couldn't stop. And so in preparation for this session, I went back and I wrote down all the campaigns that I've been part of over the years, and I came up with 19 campaigns since 2006. So I know you're already here and we've already piqued your interest about this session, but I did want to just show that I do have a bit of experience to draw on. And these are federal, provincial, municipal leadership races, nomination races, and everything in between. I also wanted to be transparent about two things. So first, the color coding on this list is to show that I've lost more than I've won. Those are in red, and the green are the wins. And I'm still here, and I'm still doing it. And while losing is not the worst thing in the world, and the sun does come up the next day, it's definitely more fun to win. And two, that yes, I tend to align with a particular political party more than the others, but I think we need strong and functioning parties across the spectrum, and at the municipal level, we really need strong people, no matter your political leanings, no matter your background or your education, to run and to sit in office. And so I'm here to share what I have learned along the way and what I know about campaigning, and to assure you that this presentation is nonpartisan. So let's get into it. Here's what I am going to cover tonight. I'll talk a bit about why you should campaign, even if you've done this before, or maybe you've never done it, or you think you have the win in the bag already. I still think it's worth your time and effort to spend some time campaigning. I'll go through some basic steps, some key dates, and important information to keep yourselves out of trouble along the way. And then I'll talk about the building blocks to a successful campaign. There will be some time for questions, and I'll wrap up with a few key takeaways before Heather comes back up to the mic. So first off, why bother? Again, you're here, so I'm going to assume, and there's so many of you who said you're curious, so I'm going to assume you've got some interest and you care a bit about campaigning, or you're just curious about what it looks like, or you're here to tell me that you've done it many times and that I'm doing it wrong, and that is all totally valid. But I want to start off to say that you should take the time and effort to run or to be part of a campaign, be it public office or a cause that you care about. So first of all, campaigning matters because a few votes can make a big difference. These are some examples of tight races in the last municipal election here in Haliburton County, and there are many, many more across the province and across the country. You may have heard about one recently, a federal election that was decided by one vote that then was appealed and appealed and appealed and eventually was nullified and had to go back to an election. There have also been elections decided by coin toss, and if that doesn't make you afraid, then you're perhaps not super politically inclined, but that terrifies me. And so all of this to say that, a few households can really make a big difference when it comes to the votes that decide an election. And if you can do something to actually affect the results in a positive way, why not try? The same thing is true for an advocacy or a public awareness campaign. If you are here because you want to pitch for some change, the couple votes we're talking about might be among council members, where literally one vote can turn the decision one way or the other. So instead of sitting back and hoping that things will turn out your way, I'm going to walk you through what you can actually do to try to swing the outcome in your direction. I also want to ground you in what is possible. So this chart shows a few things. First, it shows the total number of eligible voters compared to the actual number who cast a vote in the last municipal election and what that looked like for the overall turnout. The last box here, closest to me, is the total number of votes taken by the person who eventually won the job. So I'm going to suggest to you that these are not huge numbers to achieve. Not that it wasn't hard work to get those numbers, but just that it is achievable. And if you start to think about your own personal networks and the people that those people are connected to and that those people are connected to, you can probably come up with at least a few hundred people who might consider voting for you. The other thing I want to highlight is the overall turnout. As we at the Democracy Project have talked about before, it is quite low. It's not unique to this community. This is happening across the board, but that is a pretty low turnout. And what it means from a campaign perspective is that instead of having to fight against an opponent to try to convince the same person or people to vote for you, there are literally thousands of people in our community who didn't cast a ballot for anyone. And thinking about how to reach those folks and convince them to vote for you is an excellent use of your time, especially because you may be the only person who gets in contact with them, and those are your votes for the taking. As well, we have plenty of evidence now to show that campaigning does work to increase both your vote, your share of the vote, as well as the overall turnout. I will talk more about this first piece, the voter identification and get out the vote, but essentially identifying your individual supporters and then doing whatever it takes legally to get them to actually cast a ballot can make a huge difference. We're not bribing people, okay? We're just going to really encourage them to go vote, but especially if we think back to those close races, right? Boosting vote share by 5 to 10%, that can be the difference right there. And as well, much as I'm not actually a personal fan of lawn signs, and I'm very well known in some parts for telling people that signs don't vote, and they don't. Much to my disappointment, it turns out that lawn signs do actually increase the vote share. It's not a particularly cheap way to increase your vote share, but it does work. And it certainly helps drive up name recognition and sort of the awareness that an election is happening. As well, same thing for advocacy campaigns, right? Having that lawn sign sort of presence in the community is seen and people notice it. And the more candidates there are, and the more of them who are taking part in campaigning, the more that overall turnout goes up. More participation in our democracy means a healthier system all around. And in preparation for this session, I spoke with a couple other campaigners to get their thoughts if they had any brilliant pieces of wisdom to impart. And so Andy, some of you from Minden Hills might recognize him from a town hall last year, has been a very successful federal municipal politician, and he too comes from the school of knocking on doors as a way to be successful in campaigns. So that's his little tidbit of advice for you tonight, is that municipal campaigns are won at the door by those who show up. So let's talk about some of the basic steps and the key dates for this election campaign, which has already started. We had, of course, originally planned this session to happen before the campaign period opened and had to reschedule, but it is underway now. So first of all, who can run? The requirements are very simple, and there's a couple things I want to point out here. There is a point at the end here about disqualifications, so you can look this up. I doubt it affects many folks, but you can't run if you are an inmate who's been sentenced to jail, like are currently in jail. You can't be a staff member of the municipality unless you take an unpaid leave of absence and then resign if you're successful. You can't be a judge of a court. You can't be an MPP, an MP, or a senator. And I want to highlight that you do need to live, own property, and they call this a non-resident owner, or be a renter in the municipality that you want to run in. Another little exception is that you can be the spouse of a non-resident owner and run as well in that municipality. But what you'll notice is not here is anything about education or background or length of time in the community or a degree or a diploma or a certificate. And I think this quote from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario says it well. Many people assume they don't have the resume, but it's really not about what you've done, it's about who you are. I think that we all benefit when people from different backgrounds and experiences run for office and sit in government because they bring those different experiences to the table when they're making decisions. So the eventual policy or action being taken is more likely to be reflective of our community. So if you're here because you're thinking about running, but you're worried that you don't have the right resume, I say to heck with it, you should run anyway. And then we had this slide created by the amazing Jessica Slade and our steering committee for the first presentation, and we thought it'd be good just to highlight it here again, especially to emphasize that you don't need to be a lawyer or a policy wonk to make a great local politician. There is a lot of work that the professional municipal staff do, and it's their job to provide advice on the many different courses of action a council can take, as well as to tell you what impacts those actions might have. Broadly speaking, council members decide on what needs to be done, and staff are the ones who decide how it gets done and to implement those decisions of council. And one of the things at the end here that staff oversee, specifically the clerk, is the election process itself. And you'll hear me reference the clerk a few times in this presentation because they are an important part of the election system that happens. So back to the campaign, we wanted to highlight that there are 25 elected positions across the community on the ballot this year. Each township does things slightly differently, but there is a mayor directly elected in each township, 2 deputy mayors directly elected, one in Dysart, one in Minden Hills, while the deputy mayors in Algonquin Highlands and Highlands East are appointed after the election from among the elected councillors. And then there are 4 or 5 elected councillors for each municipality. There is also 1 school board trustee for all of Haliburton County. So that is 25 elected roles that we, the people, are hiring for and that we all need good people to stand for. A few basic steps here and some of the language that is used in Ontario. So being nominated is the process of becoming an official candidate. Until you take these steps on the far side of the screen, you can tell everyone you want that you're running, but no one can actually vote for you. So please make sure that you go and do this sooner rather than later. You will need to file your paperwork in person at the municipal office here in our community during regular business hours, and some municipalities require you to make an appointment. So this is a good time if you're considering, again, and you haven't gone already, to take a look at their website. They've all got very comprehensive election pages, and to look for the fine details like that, because I'd hate for you to be all ready and excited to go and show up at the office and the clerk's office says, that's great, make an appointment, come back another time. So just check out and make sure that you know before you show up. The forms are available on the municipality's website. The nomination form is pretty simple, and there's also a form to collect 25 signatures. So because we are communities of certain size, you need to have sort of an endorsement from 25 local voters to say, yes, we think this person should run for office. If you're running for school board trustee, you don't need those signatures. But if you're running for council, you will need them. And a few tips is, first of all, they need to be original signatures on a piece of paper. People can sign more than one person's nomination form. It's not actually a guarantee that that person will vote for you, although when it comes to identifying your vote, hopefully you'll go back to the people who signed your nomination form and try to convince them first to vote for you. And it's important that the person themselves is an eligible voter in the municipality. It's also a good idea to collect more than 25 signatures, just in case someone does it wrong. You'll need that person's name, their qualifying address, and then their original signature. There is a small fee to run. Usually this has to be paid by cash, certified check or money order, or debit. Again, depends sometimes on the community, but it will be repaid to you once you file your campaign financial statement at the end of the election. One thing I'm not talking much at all today is the participation of third parties. So these are people, businesses, or unions who pay for advertising during a campaign period to support, promote, or oppose an election candidate or an issue. There are also requirements for third parties to register and track their finances kind of in a similar way to candidates. And so if you think you might be included in a third party, then I really encourage you. I believe all the municipalities have information about third parties in their websites, but you can also go to the Municipal Affairs website for the Government of Ontario and look for the guide for third party advertisers. And lastly on this slide, just a few dates to highlight. So the campaign period officially opened on May 1st, and some folks have actually filed their paperwork already. I see there is already a competitive race for mayor in Minden Hills, among some other seats, but that one in particular stood out to me with 3 folks, I believe, have already filed their paperwork. But you have until August 21st at 2 p.m. sharp to file. And remember, if you need an appointment, you want to make sure that you are not the person who walks in at 1:55 with your paperwork. Turns out you needed an appointment. So 2 p.m. sharp on August 21st. That is also the last day to withdraw. So if you change your mind and you don't want your name to be on the ballot anymore, you have to withdraw by August 21st at 2 p.m. After that, you could, of course, withdraw, but your name will still be on the ballot. And so people may still vote for you. And then on August 24th, the final list of candidates will be published, and that includes if any positions were acclaimed and nobody ran against them, and that person has become the elected official in that position. And then on September 1st, candidates get access to the voters list, which can be helpful as you are trying to identify people in your community who might vote for you. There are some new rules about how that list is handled and protecting personal information. And so when you file your paperwork, the clerk will either speak to you about that or you can ask them about that process. Or I'm sure that they will be telling you those things before they give you access to the voters list. A critical piece of information that you need to have and to share with your supporters is how to vote. So each of our municipalities offers voting by phone and internet, and in Minden Hills you also have the option of voting with a paper ballot. Each municipality will also offer advanced voting, with Dysart and Highlands East starting on October 16th, and Minden Hills starting on October 10th, including 1 day of in-person paper ballots on October 10th at the community center. Algonquin Highlands has yet to announce their dates, but I'm sure they are coming soon. Election Day is Monday, October 26th, and voting closes at 8 p.m. sharp. And so this is the thing that if you're at the community center, the doors close at 8 p.m. And if you're in the parking lot and you're still trying to get there to vote, that is too bad. The doors close, it is done. And just when I think about this and sort of come back to getting out your vote, my serious advice to you is to not wait until Election Day. So think about it. If there are people who are already committed to voting for you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, people who've encouraged you to run all along, why wait until the very last day, especially everything that can happen on Election Day or any given day, right? People get sick, the kids get sick, the dog gets sick, you got to drive to the emergency vet in Peterborough, there's some crazy thunderstorm, or it's a gorgeous day in October and everybody wants to go out on the water, whatever it may be, 1 million things can happen. And so if people are committed, do everything you can to try to encourage them to vote in the advanced ballots. It also means there's more time so that if something goes wrong, maybe someone can't access their ballot, or they need additional accessibility support, or they're not on the voters list and they need to gather additional proof that they can vote. Whatever the case may be, if they start the process on October 10th or 16th, then there is quite a bit more time to make sure that they can actually cast their ballot before Election Day. And if you're running yourself or you're on somebody's team, you should vote at your earliest opportunity. First, because then that vote is in the bank, and you can focus your efforts on all of the other votes that you need to find. And second, because then you have been through the process more recently, and so if there are folks who need some help and you're supporters, you've been through it recently, you kind of help them along. And by the way, I'll just say this is the way the trend is moving. Election after election, we see more and more people casting their ballots in the advance polls. So if you're thinking about your campaign and how you're sort of staging things out, activities you might want to do, think about that pulling of the vote, the encouraging people to vote starts October 16th or October 10th in Minden Hills. So I've touched on a few requirements and rules along the way, but I did want to spend a bit of time on some of the key rules. My advice to you is to stay out of trouble for lots of reasons, but chiefly among them, there is a lot to do on a campaign. If you're campaigning, if you've taken my advice and said, yes, I'm going to do some stuff, there's lots to do. And the last thing you want to do is spend days or weeks trying to navigate your way out of a mess. Or from a more political perspective, you don't want to hand your opponents things that they can then use to criticize you with. As well, you obviously don't want to risk getting disqualified or any of the actual penalties that may come along with that. So do your best to color inside the lines, and I think it'll come back to you tenfold. The good news is that there is a lot of guidance out there to help you stay on the straight and narrow. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario has a great plain language guide on key steps and what it's like to lead, along with a ton of other helpful information and training resources. The province of Ontario publishes a more technical guide to running and particularly outlines the financial requirements along the way. And of course, if you are a super nerd like me, the final word is always the Municipal Elections Act. And if you have questions at all, or you're unsure of what a rule means, or there's something you want to do in a campaign and you're not sure if it's legal or not, I would ask the clerk. They are going to be busy. Try not to bog them down with 1 million questions that you may be able to answer on your own, but if it's really one that seems like it's a gray area, go and speak to the clerk and do it before you take whatever action that may be, so that you're asking in advance, not after the fact. And trust me, the clerks also want everyone to run a clean and above board campaign because it's good for our democracy and our institutions, but also because it's less work for them. And we will get a link up to all of these resources on our website tomorrow or when I get home. I do want to touch on a few of the most significant rules, the majority of which are around money. First of all, you can't spend any money or accept any donations until you have filed your paperwork with the clerk and they have confirmed that it's all complete. You have to open a separate bank account for your campaign if you're planning on spending money or incurring money. And I'll say that I think there's a trend here, perhaps, of people not doing that, of just having a campaign by name only. And some folks are still successful with that. But if you want to spend some money and do some campaigning, you'll need to open a separate bank account. It can't be your personal account or your business account. You do need to keep track of everything, every dollar spent and every dollar raised. You can take a look at the campaign financial statement form to get an idea of what information you'll have to submit. And then once it's filed, after the campaign ends, you will still have to keep those records until 2030. And a note that if you don't file your financial statement on time, even if you didn't spend any money and you didn't bring in any donations, you still have a form to fill that says that. And if you don't do that, you can actually be removed from office if you were elected or barred from running in the next election. And I do know people that has happened to, so don't be that person. Only individuals can contribute to a campaign, no businesses or organizations, and there's a maximum to any one campaign of $1,200. There's also a maximum of $5,000 to all candidates in one municipality. So I could make a $1,200 donation to one candidate. I don't have that kind of money, but I could if I did. To one candidate, the same to another candidate, and then up to $5,000 across all those candidates in one municipality. The exception, because there's always exceptions, is that candidates and their spouses can contribute a larger amount to their own campaign, and that is calculated by the clerk. So if you file your paperwork, they will give you what that number is. In Dysart last time, because I managed to find those statements, if you were running to be a member of council, the maximum that the candidate or their spouse could donate to their own campaign was just over $5,000, and for mayor it was $10,000. So it's quite a significant increase. A few more notes. You will also have a maximum spending limit, which is calculated by the clerk based on the number of eligible voters, and they'll give you that amount when you file your paperwork. To give you an idea, I found the ones from Dysart, so thank you to the staff there for posting those online in a place that I could find them. The spending limit to run for mayor last time was $19,000, 474. Deputy mayor was $16,974. And the spending limit for members of council was $6,500. So I expect that'll probably have increased in between the campaigns, but just to give you a ballpark of what that might look like, at least in Dysart, probably Minden Hills, the other two may be slightly different. Of the folks who actually ran campaigns, by the way, in Dysart, the actual spending, because some folks were acclaimed, and so they waited to see if they were going to be acclaimed, and they didn't spend any money, and they didn't take any donations, and so they filed a nil report at the end of the financial period. But the spending ranged between $700 and $5,600. So people kind of spent all the way in between there. And those were all self-funded, which is interesting. It doesn't have to be. You can ask for donations. People can contribute to you, but those folks self-funded. And interestingly, it wasn't always the person who spent the most money who was the winner. So Different contributions are handled in different ways, and while in Dysart it was all self-funded, it doesn't have to be that way. You can absolutely accept contributions, and it is a great way for people to support and get engaged with your campaign, though I would caution you to make sure that people know that if they're donating to you, it's not a quid pro quo, it's not in exchange for any particular vote, or because you'll support a particular issue. I think you want to sort of set yourself up that people are supporting you in general, and if you're accepting their financial contribution, that's the understanding. There's also this piece around volunteer labor that I wanted to talk about, which is important. So if you have a friend who is a graphic designer and they offer to do some design work for your campaign, and that's what they do for a job as a professional, then that's considered a contribution, and it has to be handled closer to a donation. It's a little bit more complicated, so if this is something you're thinking about, again, you've got some friends who are professionals and they've offered to help, I would read the guide, the Ontario Provincial Guide, because it goes into it in a bit more detail. And you can always talk to the clerk before you take on that, just to be sure. Okay, last of the rules. When it comes to everyone's favorite election signs, there's no actual provincial level rules other than the fact that they can't be placed on provincial highways. But if someone has private property and they're located along the highway, they can place a sign on their private property, but it can't be in the highway right of way. I assume if they're living on the highway, they know what that space is, and so just make sure your sign is well off the right of way. Municipalities also have different rules for signs, but generally you can't do any campaigning on municipal property, including signage, and you should take care not to block movement or the view of pedestrians or vehicles. Again, best to check with the clerk if there is a sign bylaw or other rules, or you can go on the website and try to look these things up, which is a good exercise if you're going to be in council and going through the website and looking for bylaws, especially because municipal staff can remove your signs if they have been placed improperly. And I think I referenced before, signs are not cheap necessarily, so you want to make sure that if you're going to pay for them, that they're actually out in the community being seen. And while I'm on the topic of signs, I will get on my soapbox and implore you to please make your name the single largest thing on your sign. Don't pay attention to this photo here. We were young, we didn't know better, but it's your name that's on the ballot. It's your name that you want people to remember. You can for sure have where and what you're running for, or a logo, maybe a website, but just keep in mind that people will be driving by lawn signs, and it's really your name that needs to stand out. I'm now in the habit of making the last name like side to side on a lawn sign, and that's almost all you can see. And really, as people are driving by, that's all they're going to capture. So, when it comes to advertising signs, you have to identify yourself on all the signs, so it needs to say something like paid for by the campaign to elect Lauren Hunter, or something similar. And you can campaign on election day. And I encourage you to do so, especially when it comes to making sure that your supporters go out and actually cast their ballots by the end of voting. But if you're in Minden, because they're the ones that still have in-person paper ballots, you should not be anywhere near the community center on October 26th. Just stay far away and keep your nose clean. One more thought from another seasoned campaigner. This one's a recent local, especially now that I've walked you through all the technical aspects of running and staying inside the rules. And really, it's just sort of speaking to the importance of the work that you will do, the campaign you're supporting, or even the cause that you want to champion. Getting engaged in politics at any level, and particularly the local level, can have such a huge impact. And while the rest of the world often feels a little dark these days, it's helpful to remember that we can make change here locally. Sometimes slow, sometimes one step forward, two steps back, or the other way around, but it's still change and it still matters. All right, now into the campaign itself and setting yourself up for success. And if you came tonight because you have a cause you want to champion, thank you for sitting through the last couple segments. This will hopefully be a bit more impactful for you, though I do think it's helpful for everyone to know the rules of the game when it comes to running for local office. So, my friend and mentor, Andy Mitchell, always puts things into 3 buckets, and so I've got 3 things that any campaign should be about. And if you are doing something that doesn't fall into one of these 3 buckets, then you should consider that you might be wasting some of your precious time and resources. So first, identify, find your people. The people who will vote for you, the people who are open to voting for you, and the people who are open to being convinced. Think back to your networks and all of the different groups that you're involved in, and how can you find those people who would be open to that. The second task is to then motivate them to support you, to vote for you primarily. That's really at the base level. If they support you, you really just want their vote. If they're really enthusiastic, then perhaps they might consider volunteering with you, telling their friends and networks about you, hosting a coffee or a kitchen party for you to introduce you to their friends and neighbors, and maybe even donate to you if you're accepting donations. And then third, and most importantly, and I think you might be getting the theme here, but get those people to actually vote for you. You can be super popular, you can have a ton of signs out there, you can have a lot of people telling you that they think that you are great. It doesn't matter a lick unless they actually go and cast their ballot. Note that something I didn't say here is to convince people who don't like you or don't seem to be attracted to you, or you're out and you're making your pitch and someone's not really buying it. My advice is to move on to the next person. Remember from the voter turnout slide, there are literally thousands of people in our municipalities who didn't vote last time, and they're probably likely not to vote again unless they have a compelling reason to do so. So if you're out and about and you run into someone who's already supporting another candidate, I'd say move on to the next person and keep going. So what does this look like in practice? Again, 3 buckets, 3 things to do. Building blocks for the campaign. The first is to set some goals for yourself, and then to do some research, and then to write out your winning strategy. So when it comes to setting goals, you might think this is a bit silly because, of course, the goal is to win, either the campaign or something to do with the issue at hand that you're trying to raise. But when it comes to elections, there are things you can do, but there's a lot that is out of your control. Maybe some local star candidate enters the race, or something happens in the community unrelated to the campaign that shines a huge spotlight on your opponent, or the issue you are advocating for gets squashed by some upper level of government. We can't see everything coming. It can also be hard to win on your first time out, especially if you are running against someone who's been in the job already and has a good reputation. There are folks out there, everywhere, who are just going to choose a name that they recognize on the ballot, or someone they had a positive interaction with, or if you're tackling an issue that hasn't been raised in the community before, it might be a brand new thing that you're trying to do. So that's why I think it's really helpful to think about other goals and to consider what success looks like to you. Setting a goal for yourself of a certain number of votes, or a certain number of volunteers, or events participated in, or letters written, or petitions signed, whatever it may be for you. But thinking about, looking at success not just as being the ultimate win, but all of the other things in between that still really matter. As an example, when I was involved in Miriam Monsef's first run for office, it was for mayor of the city of Peterborough. We knew that it was an incredible long shot. And while she was taking it very seriously and wanted to be a credible candidate, the reality is that the cards were stacked against her. She was running against an incumbent, someone who was very well funded, who'd been in the position before, and she faced some traditional barriers for entry into politics. She was young, she was a woman, she was an immigrant, she was Muslim. There were a lot of things stacked up. And so we looked at it as a 2-campaign strategy. And we worked really hard to position her for success in the campaign, but also in the longer run. We set vote and volunteer goals, as well as a goal to increase her positive reputation in the community and expand her network. Lo and behold, she did lose that first race, but then she went on to win the next 3. Largely because of that hard work, I think, that we did in the first campaign to set the stage. And if you go back and you look at other folks who've run for office, especially at those upper levels, but municipally as well, a lot of the times they've run and lost and run again, and it's the second or third time out that they're able to be successful. Next, the research piece of this. So I do encourage you to do some homework, kind of broadly, but then also about yourself. You want to take a look at how many votes it took to win last time so that you can be thinking about setting that vote goal of trying to reach something that'll be successful. I'm going to guess that you probably already have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in the community, but if you're not sure, this is the time to spend a bit of work reading our amazing local media, listening to the radio and local podcasts, checking out the Facebook groups, and coming up with a list of the core and pressing issues. Do some network mapping. It doesn't have to be huge, and even if you don't want to pull together a big campaign team, you can still benefit from some good help. Someone who's good with computers and can help you keep track of your supporters. Someone who is good with communications and marketing. Someone who knows finances and tracking people to come with you to events to help you knock on doors. Write down their names, how you can get in touch with them, and who can help you reach into different networks that you want to try to target. And take a bit of time to go through those guides that I talked about earlier. Spend some time on the AMO, the Association of Municipalities website, of Ontario website, going through their resources. You could watch the last few Democracy Project videos or sign up for a training session, and AMO actually has more training sessions coming up in June. Even if you have a good idea of how the job works, now is the time to really dig in. People are going to want to know that you understand the job, even if they don't always or don't understand all the finer bits of it, so that they have confidence that you can navigate it and that their vote will be well used. I would say that this all applies to issue campaigns too. Trying to figure out who else is in the space and what are they talking about. Are there allies in other groups or networks who want the same thing that you do that you might be able to collaborate with? Who are your likely supporters? How can you reach them? Who are your opponents? What are they saying, and how can you best counter their arguments? And lastly, spend some time thinking and writing about yourself. You are the person who's going to be on the ballot or the issue that you're trying to bring forward. And the first thing people are going to want to know is who the heck are you and why are you running? Aim to come up with a 20-second elevator pitch that covers those essential items. Who are you and why are you running? And then my note at the end here is that authenticity matters. The person you present yourself to be in the campaign better be the same person you are at 8 a.m. at the grocery store on a Saturday morning. Because people can smell fake a kilometer away, and they generally don't like it. It's also a lot for you to have to put on your candidate face at the grocery store at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and so it's just very tiring. So I encourage you to be yourself, be your best you, sure, but be you in all of the work that you're trying to do. And you'll also see that what are your thoughts on the key issues. For me, is towards the bottom of the list. For others, it would be much higher. But I think, and people are going to ask you about, those core and pressing issues, and do you have a perspective, and what are your thoughts? And some are absolutely driven to vote based on the issues. But voting isn't always a logical thing. It's a very emotional thing. And so the way that you present yourself, how you describe yourself, and how you make people feel, that is usually what is going to drive them to actually go out and cast their ballot for you. And when it comes to choosing what activities you want to take part in, what the campaign will look like, I just want to tell you that every size counts. Big or small, grassroots with some friends around a kitchen table, or something with all the bells and whistles, it all matters, and it can all have an impact on getting you elected or championing your cause. What is most important is planning for the resources that you have, the time, the money, and the people. The time especially is limited, right? We know Election Day is October 26th. It's coming, and so you've got a limited amount of time to work within. And so plan for that, or what you can reasonably expect to get. It doesn't really help to come up with a campaign plan for a $10,000 campaign when realistically, you can really only identify $2,000 or $3,000 worth of spending or worth of donations that you think you can get. Or have a plan for 35 volunteers, and realistically, maybe you've got 3 or 4. But even with just those 3 or 4, even with a small amount of money, or you and your spouse, or just you alone, you can accomplish a lot. Target the plan that you come up with to the resources that you have and recognize your limits. And then you'll want to think about what you want to spend your time doing. And all of these tactics, I would say, apply to running for office as well as supporting an issue-based campaign. So there's 2 big buckets of activities, the air game and the ground game. So the air is all about communications and marketing, getting that message out about who you are and why you're running, and it's the central pillar to the motivate bucket of campaigning. There are a lot of tactics to use, but if you go back to your work of thinking about who your likely voters are and your supporters and where to reach them, then you can pick the tactics that are most likely to connect with those people. There's also a lot to say, so we've got a lot up here. You can be doing leaflets and brochures and business cards. You can be on social media. You could do some advertising, direct mail, having a website, just emailing and calling your personal networks, attending all candidate events. All of those help with sort of that air war of getting that information out there. I'll say that there is a lot to say about social media, especially the harms that can come from it. From a campaign perspective, I do still see value in reaching people through social media because that is where a lot of people are. But I encourage you to be thoughtful about setting your boundaries and thinking about what it will look like to use the same channels if you get elected. So if you use a channel during a campaign, Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, TikTok, I don't even know, but whatever it is, then people will have an expectation that they can reach you that way if and when you are elected into office. And so, I've seen people create Facebook groups that are sort of more, maybe not closed communities, but ways for them to kind of control what's happening. I've seen people say they don't respond to requests through Facebook Messenger. Whatever it may be, try to think about something that you can stick with in the campaign and then on the other side of it as well. And another note just about all candidates events. We talked about giving you a preview of what the Democracy Project is up to, and so spoiler alert, that includes some all candidates events that we'll be hosting in each of the townships. So we're biased, but generally, if other people are willing to do the work for you of gathering community members together, I do think it's a good idea to show up and try to take part in that conversation. And then on the ground side, this is all about finding your voters, identifying them by name, and having a way to get back in touch with them once voting begins. You can be the person with the clipboard that goes around with pen and paper and collects names and addresses or an email address or a phone number. You could have the Notes app on your phone and just be keeping track of people as you talk to them. You could have a form on your website. It doesn't have to be complicated, but the whole idea is when someone says they want to support you, make sure you can get back in touch with them so that you can make sure they go vote. You can collect that by going door to door in your community, by being out at events or on social media, although it is much harder to collect contact information through social media. But I really encourage you to try knocking on doors for a few reasons. As I understand it, and I know there's a lot of folks in the room who've run before, and so you will tell me if I am wrong, but it is not a super common practice at the local level here. But it's absolutely the name of the game at the provincial and the federal levels, and for a good reason. Having that one-on-one conversation with someone to understand their interests and priorities is not only going to help fuel your campaign and kind of give you more information to work with, it actually gives you a completely unfiltered understanding of what is really happening in the community and what people are really talking about. And second, there's nothing quite like getting to really know your community by going to almost every door in it. It can be slow going and it takes a good amount of time, especially because not everyone will be home when you knock, but it absolutely pays off. Often I find we are the first people to come to somebody's door, and if you're there to have a real conversation and you're the candidate yourself especially, that's going to really make an impact and stick with them. The key is that you find your supporters wherever you find them and then have a way to get back in touch with them so that you can make sure they actually cast a ballot once voting begins. Or if it's an issue campaign, to get back in touch with them with your ask, to sign a petition, to attend an event. People will tell you that they always vote, or they will promise that, yes, this time they will vote, no problem, they've got it. Voter turnout tells a different story. And people often don't want to admit that, and it may be that they're not interested in voting, but more often than not, something happened. They planned to, they got the thing in the mail, they put it with all the other bills. Life is busy, right? The kids got sick, whatever it may be. And so life happens, and that's why you want to sort of push a little bit, kindly, gently, to say, I'd love to be able to just get back in touch with you. Make sure you don't have any issues with the voting process, and just make sure I can check off your name that you went and you cast your ballot. A reminder phone call, an email, a door knock, or a flyer once voting begins, along with a reminder about why it is so important that they vote, can really make a difference in how an election turns out. When it comes to contact information that you want to try to gather from folks, the best thing would be a cell phone number or an email address. That's easier on your end. You can just sit and make a bunch of phone calls to folks to remind them to vote or email them. But if you're outdoor knocking and you just have someone's physical address, that's okay too. It just means you want to think about how you're going to get back out to those folks, that you probably want to have a flyer that you can go back out to the doors with that has your contact information on and information about the fact that voting is open, and who they can contact if they have any questions. And again, a reminder about how important it is to vote. I will say I've also done quite a few things to help make sure people vote, including shoveling gravel in someone's driveway when they told me they had to get that task done before they could go vote. So that's correct. Luckily, it was only about 6 scoops before they were like, okay, I'll go get my ID, we'll go do this. But right back to the beginning, right? Those close elections, 29 votes, you don't want to be the person the day after the election who thinks, man, if I'd only gone back to those couple of doors, back to that household that had 5 voters in it or whatnot, that could have been the difference. So do all you can legally to make sure that those folks go cast their ballot or stay at home and cast their ballot on the internet, which is how we're voting. So with all of these pieces in place and all the thinking you have done, you can write your plan. And I really encourage you to actually write it down. Paper and pen, a laptop, a phone, whatever works for you, but actually write it out. It can be a living plan. It can be something that changes and adapts as things go along, but it's incredibly helpful to have a place to come back to, especially when things get so busy. And you need to refocus your energy, remind yourself of why you're doing this thing in the first place again, and just get back on track. It doesn't have to be complicated, or it can be full Leslie Knope with the color-coded binder, but write it down and refer back to it often. And just map out the things that I've talked about so far, your goals, who you are and why you're running, who and where are your key voters, how you will reach them, and what resources you need and how you'll get them. With all of this in mind, I think that you have what you'll need to run a fantastic campaign and come out the other side successful. So that was a lot of talking, and I'm going to... So I'm happy to take any questions, if there are any. Yes, sir. You're in the dark and I am not, so you're fun. Yes, go ahead.
So I put a light on that? Yeah. If you are running some sort of a social event or something and you have a donations bucket, is that legal? Because people could be putting money in, you wouldn't know who it's from, and how would you claim that on your...
That's a great question, which is why I would encourage you not to do the thing that might be questionable. So the cleaner, so if I go back, you are allowed to accept cash donations. I think it was under $25. But if you show up in your campaign financial statement and say, oh, I took in $1,000 in $10 bills, that might raise some eyebrows and some question marks. So I think you're better to try to ask for checks or for e-transfers or pieces like that, rather than an open bucket that anyone can add to, pull from, etc. So that's my advice. Paper trail is preferable. Yeah. Other questions?
What constitutes a renter? Because we have a lot of cottages, and a lot of people are part-time renters or renting from their significant other. What constitutes a legal voter for renters?
That's a great question that I don't have the exact answer for off the top of my head, but I guarantee you it's either in the Municipal Elections Act or it's in the Ontario Guide, and as well the local clerks around here in their offices would know quite well. But I think it's as it sounds. If you are renting property here, then you have the ability to vote. Seasonal, part-time, you're renting here. And I'll say that, so this has come up, and we've heard this in other places too, that seasonal residents, again, if you own or rent property here, you are allowed to vote here as well as your home municipality. And that, if you're going now onto the voters list, which is now managed by Elections Ontario, so that has shifted a little bit. some folks have been having a bit of trouble confirming that they're on the voters list. All the more reason to encourage your supporters to do this process early, to check the voters list, to make sure that they're on there or that they can get on there, to make sure that things are going to be as smooth as possible for them to be able to cast their vote. Great questions. Thanks. Anything else? Yes.
You're so good at this, Lauren. Have you ever thought of running yourself? Yeah.
That's very kind. The closer I get to it, the less I want to do it myself. Is the honest answer. Never say never, Pat, but not right now. Yeah.
If someone had property in 2 municipalities in Haliburton, could they vote twice?
Great question. I don't have that off the top of my head. There may be others here who know the law, but I would definitely check either the Elections Act or the guide. Yeah. The other one is to contact Elections Ontario and ask them that question, because they are now in charge of the voters list and determining those sorts of pieces. So I would contact them. We have a Mentimeter, last Mentimeter question. We're just curious as to where you came from tonight, where you live, where you work, where you spend the most time. If you want to pull out your phone and just drop a pin on our little map. Again, we've been doing this one through all of our sessions to try to get a sense of where folks have come from. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Just interesting to see the spread across the county. Couple last ones. A little bit. Highlands East is underrepresented. There's a couple that are really close to the line, so maybe they're over. Okay. So just a few key takeaways for tonight. Number 1, be you, whoever that may be. People want authenticity, and they want to know that the you who shows up at their door is going to be the same person taking part in council meetings, showing up to pick up their kid at daycare, at the grocery store, or at the park. So be your authentic self. Number 2, write it down. Get a nice notebook, pick a fun pen, whatever you do, write down what you want to do, and then let that guide you. Number 3, keep track of who you talk to and how to get in touch. If there's been one theme, it has been that all the way through this presentation. So get in the habit that anytime somebody says they will support you, you say, that's so great. What's your name again? And how do I get in touch? Thank you so much. And if people are a little unsure, I would say just to explain that it's to make sure that everybody goes out and casts their vote. And if they still need to be convinced, you can blame it on me and the Democracy Project. I went to this session and there was this lady and she said I had to do this, and so I'm doing it. That's fine. Number 4, small or large, simple or complex, it all counts. So campaigning doesn't have to be all the bells and whistles. It might be you and your Aunt Jo and a bunch of flyers, but it matters that you get out into the community and you talk to people about why you're running and encourage them to vote. And then lastly, back to the first part of the presentation and all of the rules. If you're not sure about whether something is legal or not, consult the guides or ask the clerk. Thank you so much for your attention and interest tonight, and for all of the amazing campaigning that you're going to do out there and helping to raise our voter turnout. I know it can be a grind, but it absolutely strengthens our local democracy, and I'm very thankful for your participation. And there's a question belatedly from Eric. Yes?
I mean, the province is interfering in municipal politics. And I was just wondering how far that could go.
Great question. So the question was the provincial, you called it interference in our local democracies, and I don't have an answer for you. I am here to talk about campaigning and how to do these things. So I'm going to sidestep your very relevant question and say, I think all the more reason for good folks to run for office and to get involved and to raise their voices about issues that they care about the things that they see that they don't like in their communities, be it running for office or mounting, a local advocacy campaign campaign. I know there's lots of folks across the province who are concerned about these changes, and I think that I have seen the province listen on a number of occasions where they have come out with a decision and the public backlash has been strong, and then they have reversed course. So if there are things that you're worried about, then I encourage you to get involved with a campaign to do something about it.
Power to the people.
That's right. Any other last questions that aren't about strong mayor powers? Okay, Heather.
Thank you very much, Lauren. So, as I mentioned at the outset of this evening, this is the final session of a 4-part series, but the Healthy Democracies Project team has plans for the year to come. So, spoiler, thanks a lot. But I just wanted to give you a sense of what's on the horizon. So they will be expanding the resources available on their website, connecting with some of the resources that Lauren mentioned available through the Association of Ontario Municipalities of Ontario, to make them easier to find, so kind of to bring them all into one space. So be sure to check out their website as it evolves over the next few weeks. In addition, inspired by the work of Grey Highlands Municipal League in 2022, they will also be launching 2 new initiatives focused on community education leading up to the election in the fall. The first initiative is a series of mailouts and digital information to encourage people to run, to help share information about the candidates, and then encouraging people to vote. So the first and the last piece will be a physical mailout to those that are on the Canada Post list, and then there are some efforts to reach those of us who are not on the treasured Canada Post list as well. The candidate menu will be available digitally, and however, if additional funds are secured, they'll mail that out as well. Just a request from Lauren in advance. If you do decide to run, you will hear from Lauren requesting a photo and a bio, so please respond to her so you can be part of that information sharing and let this project help you get your name out. The second initiative taken on by the group will be hosting in-person all candidates meetings in each of the 4 municipalities. The Healthy Democracies Project team has already started to reach out to local partners, previous MCs of those types of events, just in an effort to really coordinate and make those robust information sessions for all of our community members. So those will launch in the fall, so stay tuned for more information on that. I would be remiss not to note that this project is also funded by the Haliburton County Development Corporation's local initiative program. And I say that with a lot of pride that we have the opportunity to support great work like what's happening here. So all that to say, lots more to come. On behalf of the steering committee, I would really like to thank you for attending tonight, for your interest in the project, everything that you do to support the beautiful community we live in. And a big thank you to the committee for your time and energy. This is such an inspiring example of how a small group of people can make a huge impact. So thanks for coming tonight.